loves horses, and her boyfriend too. Stephen reached over to switch stations, and I slapped his hand away. Pally, your voice makes me want to run this car into the ocean. He pretended to swerve right. I sang even louder, which woke up my mother, and she started to sing it too. We both had terrible voices, and Stephen shook his head in his disgusted Stephen way. He hated being outnumbered. It was what bothered him most about our parents being divorced, being the lone guy without our dad to take his side. We drove through town slowly, and even though I just teased Stephen about it, I didn't really mind. I loved this drive, this moment, seeing the town again, Jimmy's crab shack, the putt-putt, all the surf shops. It was like coming home after you've been gone a long, long time. It held a million promises of summer and of what just might be. As we got closer and closer to the house, I could feel that familiar flutter in my chest. We were almost there. I rolled down the window and took it all in. The air tasted just the same, smelled just the same. The wind making my hair feel sticky, the salty sea breeze. All of it felt just right, like it had been waiting for me to get there. Stephen elbowed me. Are you thinking about Conrad? He asked mockingly. was dark, completely unattainable, unavailable. He had a smirky kind of mouth, and I always found myself staring at it. Smirky mouths make you want to kiss them, to smooth them out and kiss the smirkiness away, or maybe not away, but you want to control it somehow. Make it yours. It was exactly what I wanted to do with Conrad. Make him mine. Jeremiah, though, he was my friend. He was nice to me. He was the kind of boy who still hugged his mother, still wanted to hold her hand, even when he was technically too old for it. He wasn't embarrassed either. Jeremiah Fisher was too busy having fun to ever be embarrassed. I bet Jeremiah was more popular than Conrad at school. I bet the girls liked him better. I bet that if it weren't for football, Conrad wouldn't be some big deal. He would just be quiet, moody Conrad, not a football god. And I liked that. I liked that Conrad preferred to be alone, playing his guitar. Like he was above all the stupid high school stuff. I liked to think that if Conrad went to my school, he wouldn't play football. He'd be on the lit mag, and he'd notice someone like me. When we finally pulled up to the house, Jeremiah and Conrad were sitting on the front porch. I leaned over Stephen and honked the horn twice, which in our summer language meant, "Come help with the bags, stat." Conrad was 18 now. He just had a birthday, and he was taller than last summer, if you can believe it. His hair was cut short around his ears, and was as dark as ever, unlike Jeremiah's, whose hair has gotten longer, so he looked a little shaggy, but in a good way, like a 1970s tennis player. When he was younger,